All right, so in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, this meeting was advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat and posted on the Township Bulletin Board on Thursday, April 9th, 2019.
Thank you. Can you call the roll call and then also any announcements or agenda items?
So Tracy Carluccio.
Here.
Larry Tatch.
Here.
Pauline Seraphin.
Here.
Leo DeCandia. I see him saying here. Janice Grover.
Here.
Chris
Here.
Sobayevsky.
Here.
And Tara Ramsey.
Here.
Okay. So roll call complete, Tracy.
Thank you. And announcements or agenda review?
So from an agenda review perspective, on the agenda that was distributed, we need to remove item number 8, the public hearing for our ordinance, because tonight we will be doing an initial reading of the ordinance. Because we are presenting the ordinance in a new location technically, because this is a remote meeting, and also because it's been several months since we actually did the initial announcement, we need to go back and do another official hearing. We will do legal notice, and then we will have a public hearing of that ordinance at the following meeting. And I believe that was the only change to the agenda. Anything else, Tracy?
Nope, nothing from me. So at this time, we have presentation of the minutes. We're going to postpone the minutes until next month. There was a lot going on this month. And so for our meeting, our regular business meeting, which will be the 4th Tuesday of this month, a couple of weeks from now, we'll have our February meeting minutes as well as our March meeting minutes. Okay, next on the agenda is we're open to the public, and this is for anybody who wants to bring up anything that's not on our agenda, and it's limited to 15 minutes.
Okay, so I think we need a motion to open to the public.
I'll make a motion to open to the public.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Would anybody like to address the board?
Okay, I see no one else present at the meeting, Tracy.
Okay, so we have a motion to close.
So move. I'll so move.
I'll second.
Okay, Larry moved it and Chris
Yes.
seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So carried. Next on the agenda is unfinished and new business. Hunterdon County Division of Public Health Inspectors report. Jenny was not able to attend tonight. She was going to try to send a written report.
Yeah, I never received one, Tracy.
Okay, we'll put
Yeah,
that off.
so no update from Jenny. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put hear her report at our next meeting.
Mhm.
At this time, we'll go to preview committee, and we have Wayne Ingram, engineer, on the line, and
Hello.
he's going to review for us the 2 items that we have, because he's the engineer for both of them. So the first one is Salakian Associates, 12 Iron Horse Drive, Block 14, Lot 7, and it's a septic application. Wayne, if you would introduce yourself for the record, please, and spell your name, and then we'll start out.
Sure. Wayne Ingram, I-N-G-R-A-M. I'm the engineer for the applicant, Jim Salakian.
Okay, great, thank you. So the preview committee did meet and we reviewed this. And I think probably we have some comments as we move through it. But what we'd like to do, Wayne, is have you just introduce the application for us, and then we're going to go through the 3 waivers that are requested and any other questions after that. Excuse me. So go ahead, Wayne, why don't you explain this application to us?
Okay. So this is a property that's just under an acre. It's a 3-bedroom dwelling. He has a failing septic, not a transaction at this time. He was just, again, looking to repair the system because he's pumping it basically on a weekly basis at this point. The kind of unfortunate thing about the property, aside from its shape, is that the well is located very central to the site. And then to the south, which is actually to the top of your page, an adjacent property also has a well. A further complication is there's a gas pipeline on that southern line, and it was debatable at the time what the size of that easement was. There were some discrepancies between various plans. So we attempted to do soil logs in a location 100 feet from both of those wells. Really only left one location with which to try. We had a couple soil logs which we put within 100 feet of the well because we didn't really see any other choice to get up to the 4. And then we managed to locate a couple that just outside of that limit. We got pretty good test results from the testing. I'm just pulling up the logs now. We had rates of 9 inches an hour and 47 inches an hour. And the 47 inches an hour is the one outside the bed. The 9.5 is the one on the bed limits. So 2 of the soil logs are located adjacent to the bed. The other 2 end up being a little further away. Frankly, there are just so many restrictions on the property. We go out with the best of intents, but when you really start to map it out, we decided, we could either choose to violate the well setback or locate the septic in a way in which it stayed outside of both 100-foot limits as well as the pipeline. So, using my judgment, I thought it was better to honor those well setbacks and locate it where we did. The existing septic is currently within 100 feet of the well, and there's not much of a septic there, to be honest. We managed to locate both of the tanks 100 feet from the well, just outside, and then we're going to go along the back of the lot to get the connecting line over to the septic. So the 3 waivers we needed, one was for having 2 soil logs within the limit of the bed and not the 4 that we did. Another is for having the mound be less than 20 feet from the property line. Kind of unclear, how that really applies necessarily. We noted 2 setbacks, one of 11 feet, one of 0. The side in which it's 0 really isn't the side of the mound. It's the high side of the property, so we're just tying into that contour. On the side of the property is where we're about 11 feet to the property line. The third is relation to the drain pipes in the roadway and their distance to the field. Basically, there's a couple under drains which go under the road and tie into roadside ditches along Iron Horse Drive. So we basically measured that from the corner of the field to the nearest drain pipe in the street. But what's a little different about those than most you encounter is, again, these are kind of above ground pipes, not like an underground one where there's a connection to the septic. They're basically just surface connections to the ditches. So it's not like it's a buried storm pipe where you have to worry about the septic having effluent travel into the pipes. Other than that, the soil testing was pretty good. It's a bit of a mound, but the groundwater was 3 feet at its highest point. So overall, we believe that the rates and the soil testing is all quite good. Again, those are the 3 waivers we're asking for.
Okay, thank you. So why don't we just walk through each of these waivers? But just by way of introduction, as you said, this is a mounded soil replacement system. It's pressure dosed, and it's to replace a malfunctioning system for an existing home, a 3-bedroom home with no expansion. So we can consider waivers because it does meet the requirements of what we consider waivers from not only East Amwell's code, but also the state code. So the first waiver is the toe of the mound is only 0 feet, And that's from the side, the western side of the property. Is that right? Western, I guess that would be.
It's up to, yeah, Eastern. It's the
Yeah,
arrow's upside down. Yep.
Yeah, arrows upside down. And that's where Clausen Park is. And one of the, the toe of the mound is right on the property line. And one of the things we found with other applications is that when we're right on the property line, there can be drainage problems and there can be, runoff that is a problem for the next door neighbor. So we'll talk about a condition that's required because of that, but Clausen Park is there, so it's not a house that's right there. Wayne, can you tell us, East Amwell owns that, and is there a septic system or a well on the Clausen Park that is, you say there's nothing within 100 feet, like how far away are those pieces of infrastructure?
Pretty far. There was nothing near this lot. It was all field. We certainly looked into that, and that's again why we like. You can see we have an area between the two wells. We're pushing it all the way to the back because there's nothing back there to influence. We could have moved it forward, but that would only reduce the distance to the pipes.
Okay, and then the other side, which is 11.3 feet from the property line, again, luckily there's not somebody right up against that property line. There's a drainage easement and then the pipeline easement. So there's some room there. You wouldn't have somebody looking out their kitchen window, for instance, and seeing the mound or experiencing necessarily some runoff right onto an area that they use on their property. But how that well radius that you have drawn at the top there, how that's 100 feet from the existing well on the property up there?
Yeah, so the field's about 110 feet from the well. It's the mound that you see that touches the well buffer. So we have some extra, a little bit of extra wiggle room in there.
Okay, great. So does any of the board members have any questions for Wayne on just this, the separation distance of the field, toe of the mound to the property line on either side? Okay, the second sentence in the county's letter, and one that will require us to add a condition to this approval, would be that the engineer is to inspect the grading and after it is completed, and provide a letter that all grading was done on the site and has not led to any off-site runoff or water problems. And that is something, I believe, Wayne, in other instances, that's done at an inspection after the installation. And I think the Conservation District also gets that letter.
Typically, the Conservation District doesn't, but the County Health Department does ensure that they get that certification. And yes, we do that after the system's installed and they get their final from the county soil conservation. They've stabilized it and graded it. That's when we go out and inspect. Yes.
Okay, then that letter would be a requirement, a condition of approval, and it would be provided when the system is actually in and has been inspected. Any questions from anybody on that? Okay, the number 2 waiver is the proposed disposal bed will be only 81 feet from the 2 existing 15-inch reinforced concrete pipes on Iron Horse Road. And so that doesn't meet the 100-foot separation distance from a water course that's required in East Amwell Township ordinance. It also, it does meet the 50-foot setback that's required by the state code. So it only needs a variance or a waiver from the East Amwell ordinance on this. And I think, we've talked about this before, but just so people understand, that's considered technically a water course in the state code in 7.9A, the table 4.3 that applies to this and designates how far the separation distances should be between these components. So it does meet those requirements in the state code, but not in East Amwell's. Any questions on that one? Right.
Are those pipes shown?
Go ahead.
Are those pipes
Oops. Are those pipes shown on the diagram that we received? I'm
They
just
are. You'll
looking
see
for it.
two dark lines which cross the roadway. So basically, they're cross road pipes which just connect ditches. So there's a switch
Yes, I,
out of the road, and they go into them. Yep.
yep, okay, good, thanks.
Anything else from anybody? Okay, so number 3 is that East Amwell's code requires that when pit bale tests are used, we use we have to have 2 pit bale tests and 2 soil logs per test. So that's 4 soil logs. And design shows 1 pit bale and 2 soil logs. Could you explain, Wayne, why you couldn't get the full number of pit bales and soil logs that are needed?
Sure. And actually, we did do the extra testing. It was just the problem was that, and they are shown on the plan. However, based on how we had to locate the septic once we started to map it out, once we had our testing, the 2 logs. Again, I was planning to try and put this thing within the 100-foot buffer because we didn't think we had enough room. But when we were finally able to get the final width of the gas transmission line, which frankly we were afraid to put a log too close to it, we realized we could get a little bit further buffer to the well and meet that 100-foot. So only 1 test and 1 log, which would meet state code, are located within the bed. We had 2 others which are about 20 feet further away, which had equally, consistent testing and actually a much better rate. But they are located outside of 15 feet from the bed.
So that soil log 1 and pit bale 1 and soil log 4 were good. They just weren't close enough.
Yes, they were actually, I mean, in my opinion, better logs that just happened to be within 100 feet.
Okay. Does anybody have questions on this, or does anyone see where this could be moved at all? It's a constrained lot, right? We realize that. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just going to say, it seems like that's logically the best place to put it at this point. It does just meet the 100-foot well requirement, and also just meets the 100-foot well requirement for the neighbor. So seems like a reasonable spot to put it, consistent with soil logs.
Yeah, I would agree with Larry. I think just based on the circumstances, I think where it is, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I can't see any better spot for it,
Anything else from anybody? Wayne, you use the 2.08 square feet per gallon of sewage per day?
We did, yes.
Yeah, so that's a good margin of safety that's built in. You didn't reduce it, ask to reduce that down. So it's good that we're able to keep a full-size septic field despite the cranes there.
Yeah, there's not many backup options, so we certainly want to make sure this thing functions for a long time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so there really aren't anything else at this point, unless anyone has general questions that you'd like to bring up about the application or the site. So we would consider the 3 waivers, and the condition would be the engineer's letter verifying that the final grading has been inspected and it was done so that no generated runoff will cause off-site problems. One other thing we wanted to ask, we saw that Kelly Osuch PE was the witness according to Walt Wolf's witness notes. Is that your firm's engineering witness that goes out for these tests?
Not always. I just wasn't available on the testing date, but yes, he does work with us. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we can entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move the approval of this design, subject to the 3 waivers and including the engineers providing a letter after inspection of the grading.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next application, and that is Foley, 84 John Ringo Road, Block 13, Lot 1. And this again is the septic application. It's plans for to correct a malfunctioning system to an existing 4-bedroom home with no expansion and with the use of an advanced treatment unit. And the preview committee did meet and go over this. We'd like you, Wayne, to introduce it and just go through the application, please.
Sure. Wayne Ingham again, the engineer for the applicant. So this is actually on the corner of Iron Horse Drive, just a few lots down from the last one. Unfortunately, an even smaller lot, about half the size at 0.5 acres, has an existing septic, which is about 50 feet from its well, and the tank is less than 50. Again, a failing septic. I don't believe they were set up at the moment just to repair the issue. So right off the bat, you can tell that there isn't a single spot on the property that is 100 feet from the well. So, you know, we knew right away we had to be within that distance. Again, based on the location of everything, you can see we found a very small gap that keeps us 100 feet from the neighbor. Actually 2 neighbors to the south and to the east, and allows us to maintain the 50 feet to the well on our property. So the septic is no closer than the prior system, and we're also proposing to demolish the existing tank. We're using an advanced treatment tank, and which will be outside of the state code for 50 feet. You know, really just making the best of a very tight situation on this property. I did not utilize a reduction in size, even though we're using advanced treatment. So this system is over twice the size that it would be, you know, in most other municipalities. The only thing we're taking advantage of is the reduction in the zone of treatment, because frankly, if we tried to make this meet the normal height requirement, there wouldn't be enough room to grade it into the property. The other advantage to that is there really isn't even a mound at that point. I mean, this is basically going to be a flush system to grade, so we don't have to worry about any drainage issues or anything like that. You know, important because one of the waivers we're asking for is a reduction in the distance from the house to the septic of down to 20 feet. If we had to mound this up, it just simply wouldn't be enough room, and we would end up having to undersize the bed. So again, really no other location on this property to even really attempt. We show a burial hole in the front of the yard. If there's anything that really needs to be removed from the prior system, we don't expect it's very large to begin with, but we're placing tanks basically over where that system used to be. We did only perform 3 soil logs. Difference here was there just simply wasn't another spot on the property to get a 4th one in. You know, based on, we have 2 on the southern end and 1 on the northern end. Every other spot either had the tank or the field, or, you know, would be basically right next to the log we already did. So we didn't want to have one test or anything influence the other. We did, however, in the 3 logs do 2 soil tests, both pit bales, extremely consistent rates, 4 and 4.7 inches an hour on either end of the field. So we know, you know, we have consistent and solid, you know, testing results that show that this should, you know, function quite nicely. We are, I misspoke. We are a little bit under the required sizing of 2.08. We're about 3/4 of that. So still well oversized. But again, at the site, it was a question of how big we could possibly make this to honor the other setbacks. I apologize. A couple other waivers. One is related to the septic tank to the property line, less than 25 feet. We're going to be able to maintain 10 consistent with the existing tank. Frankly, there's nowhere on the spot 25 feet from the property line that we could put it. We're also, as I mentioned, 20 feet from the building where 25 is required. A total of 8 waivers required for this system. And I think that's about it. We obviously, did look into adjacent wells and things like that, make sure we honored all of them.
Okay, thank you very much. So you're using the Norweco unit. Can you explain why you're using a pretreatment tank on this property?
The advanced treatment system, number one, was so that we didn't have to have a mound and could reduce our zone of treatment because we couldn't fit a mound on the required. Groundwater was about 4 feet, which isn't really that bad, but that would have left us with about a 3-foot mound. And based on sloping requirements and such, there'd be no way we could have fitted on the lot. Again, the other advantage, even though we were going to undersize the system anyway, because to the maximum space we could, I know it doesn't count with East Amwell, but I do believe there's a benefit to having these systems because they're going to create cleaner water, which normally allows you to reduce a bed. But in this instance, being 50 feet from the well, water quality is, of the utmost importance. And, that to me is the only way to justify reducing a 100-foot well buffer.
Anybody have any questions on the use of the advanced treatment unit? It does meet the state requirements. It's one of the approved systems. We've seen quite a few go in East Amwell in the last year or so. And I know the county's been seeing more of these going in. Okay, number 2 is that the existing well is only going to be 50 feet from the proposed disposal bed. That's less than the 100-foot requirement. Can you tell us, I know you were going to look to see if there was 50 feet of casing on the existing well. Can you tell us if you found that out?
I believe we did searches and they were unable to find records, I believe. I know we did request them from the state because I thought the county had nothing.
Okay, yeah, so as the county letter explains, and as we always do with this kind of a situation where we have an existing home and the 50 foot of casing is missing on a well that's probably older, then we do require the ultraviolet device to be installed on the well, and also a water test for coliform after the treatment is to be done and filed with the county and East Amwell Township. So that would be a condition that would be required, the ultraviolet light and the water test. Does anybody have any questions related to the positioning of the well and or the requirement for the condition? Everybody can see that this is very much squeezed into probably the only spot you had on this property. So fact that it's only ½ acre too.
It's a very constrained lot. And there's a lot on the property. They have a trampoline and a swing set, and there's no room for anything else or any other location.
Yeah, it
Okay,
doesn't seem like there's a lot of options.
I would agree. There's that's really the best option where it is.
Okay, so then number 3 is the toe of the mound is only 11.5 feet from the property line. It doesn't meet the 25-foot setback required in the East Amwell ordinance. But again, he couldn't move any closer on that side without getting into trouble with one of the well protective areas. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
And actually, I would say too that unlike this really isn't a mounded system. The drainage pattern is pretty much maintained. It's basically just moving the contour over about 10-20 feet more where it is. It's good. It's going to appear dead flat.
Right, so the county did not have that condition of requiring the letter on this, and I think that's because it's pretty much flush with the ground, right?
I would assume so, yes.
Anybody have any other thoughts on that? Okay, the fourth is the proposed disposal bed is only 20 feet from the dwelling. The state code does require 25 feet, and that's a safety setback. But, you know, you look at this, if he really couldn't get closer because then he'd be violating the 50-foot well radius around the existing well on the property. I don't know if anyone else sees anything different there. Okay, moving on, number 5. The East Amwell ordinance requires a minimum of 4 soil logs when a pit bale test is done. You did 3 of them. So, and what about the 4th one?
Just simply couldn't find another spot that wouldn't have been in the or influenced by the existing septic, or, you know, that would, you know, potentially, you know, find the line from the old, the current system they were using. So we just couldn't find another location far enough away to try forth.
Right. You wouldn't want to do it, I imagine, where the ATU tank is going in, where the old septic was, and then the septic tank is going in there. So that area with the old septic, you wouldn't want to do a soil test in there.
Correct.
Yeah. Any questions on that one? Okay. The disposal bed is only 33.3 feet from the existing stormwater piping and inlet. So that doesn't meet the 100-foot setback as per the East Amwell ordinance, and doesn't meet the 50 feet setback that's required under the state. It is a storm sewer. It's the piping, you know, and the reason is because those storm sewers carry water that eventually ends up in a stream or percolates back down into groundwater. So that's why it's regulated by the state that way and by East Amwell. But again, it looks very constrained on this map. Does anyone have any questions on that particular item?
And we're actually also about double the distance of the current septic. So we're increasing that, and making an improvement, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay, the next item in the county letter is East Amwell ordinance requires a minimum of 2.08 square feet per gallon per day for all systems. And this, which would require 1,352 square feet, and you have 900 square feet provided. Again, you already did mention this, but it's mainly to fit it into the footprint. Is that the reason?
Correct. And it actually sees the 1.33, which would be allowed for normal pressure systems. So it's obviously a reduction from the township standard. It's significantly larger than, about 50% larger than normally would be allowed with an alternative system like this.
So, you know, we noticed in the design criteria column on sheet 1, when we looked at this at preview, that when you start reading down under design criteria and you get to disposal bed area, it says 900 square feet, and it says, you know, what the bed area and what it is with the buffer. And I think what you're saying is that if it had been based on 2.08, then it would have been 1,352 square feet required, but it's a little confusing there. And we were thinking if you were to put, you know, if in front of based, you know, or it, you know, it would be to, you know, that size, but it makes it sort of look like that's what you based it on. Like you're saying, we based it on 2.08, but then that contradicts the 900 square feet above it. So it's just a little confusing there.
Yeah, I understand. I was merely trying to explain the difference between what was required and what we provided, but I can certainly revise the note.
Yeah, so it would say if it were to be based on that, then it would be that size. And so then the size that you're saying it's larger than what would have been required if you had taken the full reduction that the code allows. So what was the actual rate that you used then?
It's about 1.38. So 1.33 is what you use for as a minimum for traditional pressure dosing. 0.956 is what you can use for pressure dosed advanced treatment. So we're bigger than both of those, about 50% bigger than what would normally be required. But we do not meet the 2.08, which is about 2 times the minimum that's required.
So it's clear there. Could you actually write in when you redo that note what you actually use, the rate that you use, just so it's
Sure.
very clear?
Sure.
Does anybody else have anything on that? Okay, number 8 is the proposed tank, Rico tank and pump tanks are only 50 feet from the existing well, which is less than the 100-foot distance that our ordinance requires. And, you know, our question on that is there any way you could jimmy it a little bit to get further away with those tanks? Like, you know, towards the property line or something? You know,
I
a
would
little-
say that we would be happy to attempt to do it during construction. But because we're working over top of the old tank and the old field, I would prefer to be approved at the 50 feet. And if we can move it further, we'd certainly try. I just would hate to, you know, have a field condition prevent us from getting any further and then having to come back to the board. But I mean, we can certainly say we'll attempt it.
Any thoughts on that, Chris or Pauline? We talked about, you know, can he get a little further away? What do you think about, or anybody think about him in the field trying to do that, but not saying that, you know, putting it in stone now?
Yeah, I think that's a fair compromise. I mean, if they can at least attempt it, you know, at least it's something. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
Yeah, I would agree too, because bringing the tanks closer to that property line, doesn't that also bring them closer to is that a catch basin there perhaps?
Yeah.
There
that's
is,
true.
and you'll see the other thing you can see on Iron Horse Drive, that it's not a full driveway, but he has a curb cut off of the roadway there, which is where all the access is going to be. So the other thought was we have to position these in such a way that we can get dump trucks back into the site to install the fill. So it's just, this is logistically a tough one to install, but we'll certainly try.
It goes slightly downhill as you go towards Ironhurst Road, right?
Yes. Yep. About a foot of grade. Yep.
Yeah, so that's another thing, is you're getting it more further away and you have to pump it up further. But not much, but still. Okay. All right, so the last one is the proposed burial site for the old septic spoils is only going to be 50 feet from the existing well, and that doesn't meet the 100 feet setback requirement. And we really weren't that familiar with this because it's very seldom that we would see spoils removed from an existing, usually they just crush the system and bury it, but you can't do that because you need that space and you're putting other pieces of the infrastructure in there. So we understand you need to move it, and you show that property spoils burial area over on that west side of the property. So I did speak to the county today about this because we're not familiar with this. It's not in the table 4.3 in the state code, and they said but that is the policy that the county has. It's based on considering it to be like a septic field because it contains the same sort of contaminants as a septic field would. So you would want to keep the spoils with potential pollutants in it the same distance away from the well as you would a septic field. And this is as far as you could get that away. You want to keep it out of the 100 feet, but at least keep it out of the 50 feet. So you've moved it over there. We also, at our preview, wondered, well, could it be moved a little bit further? But the county did verify that also they want to keep 10 feet from the property line. And you don't have that mark there, but is it about 10 feet?
It's actually, the property line on that side is basically 10 feet is the back of the sidewalk. I don't show it as 10 feet, but again, realistically, that's kind of just a generic size. if you look at how big we believe the system to be, we're really not talking about much material at all. It's just a, you know, I mean, I don't expect more than, you know, one dump truck's worth of material to
Yeah.
be.
So what you're saying, the area that's shown on the map is bigger than what you really expect.
Yeah, it's just a representative area. But, you know, just to, because what I don't want was if I specify it, a contractor can put it anywhere, and that's not what I want to have happen. So I'm just kind of giving him this is the general spot you need to be outside the 50.
Oh, okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, so in addition to these, there are the 12 requirements that are included always with the advanced treatment unit. We don't need to go through them here. I think everyone's familiar with them. They're sort of listed off there in the county letter, but they're also in the application we have before us, and in the drawings on sheet, I think it's sheet 6 of 8, has all 12 of them listed out there. So those are the standard requirements according to the code for advanced treatment units, and those will be included in, you know, all the places that it's required that they be included. But the ones that the county requires, the state code requires, include also things like deed restrictions, you know, auto dialer device, certification of the installer, and those are stated on the plot plan, the county notes on pages 1, 2, 3, and 5. Does anybody have questions on those special conditions that come with ATUs? Okay, so this has kind of a long list of waivers. I don't think we necessarily have to repeat all of them. We've been through them, I think, pretty thoroughly, but if anybody wants to, we can walk through, you know, just name them off. Otherwise, we can follow the county letter, and we would have 9 waivers, and we would have 2 conditions. One would be for the ultraviolet system, and then the other would be for the water test. Excuse me, that would be done after the treatment system ultraviolet treatment system is put on the well.
So Tracy, this is Rosemary. I just had a question for you on item number 6. You mentioned that it wasn't in compliance with East Amwell code, but it also wasn't in compliance with the state code. I just didn't know if we needed anything from the state on that.
Well, what we would need to say when we write up the letter, and
Yeah.
also we would need to vote on it tonight, to say that the waiver is needed from East Amwell's ordinance and also from the state code, which
Okay.
requires 50 foot, and it only is 33.3.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be a change to what's in the county letter.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, Wayne, is there any house north of Iron Horse Road Drive?
I believe there is. Yeah, there were no buffers impacting our site from that property based on the distance. I just tried to clutter this as little as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a house there, but there's no well or septic system within the 100 or the 50 foot distance that's required.
Correct.
Okay. Were there any other general questions that anyone had on this application before we consider voting on the waivers tonight and the conditions? Okay, so the motion that we need would be to grant waivers for all 9 that we went through, and to add to waiver number 6, that a waiver is needed from the state code as well as from East Amwell code. And then also 2 conditions for the ultraviolet device on the well and the water test for coliform after treatment of the well with the ultraviolet system.
I'll move that we approve this application with all the 9 waivers, including the waiver from the county and the state for number 6, and that we do the ultraviolet light and the water test, and also the requirements that are needed for the advanced treatment system, and the lifespan of the system, the deed restriction, and all those certifications that we need every time we put the ATV system in. And
Thank you, Pauline. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I'm good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Wayne.
Thank you for
Thanks,
doing this under
Wayne.
these unique circumstances.
Well, we want to
Have a
make
good
sure
night.
people have working septic systems.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Okay.
All right, so moving on is ordinance 20-01 BH. And we are going to be having first reading tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary.
All right, so first reading for ordinance 20-01BH. Current language and text of the Code of East Amwell, Chapter 148, Board of Health Ordinance for Fees, with recommended amendments as follows. Text to be removed has been striked through, and new text has been added with underlined. Article 1, Section 149-1, Witness well tests and field work, open paren E, close paren E. Provision of witness services for field work provided by a contracted engineer on a single or multiple lot by a single witness. The first line saying minimum time has been removed and struck through. The second line indicates half day. We have struck through over 1 hour and left the language that says up to 4 hours. Under the column for lot 1, the new rate is $200. For 2 lots, the new rate is $240. For 3+ lots, the rate is $290, and we have removed N lots. And just to clarify for the board, we determined last reading that N lots was anything greater than 3. The next line for a full day, which is over 4 hours and up to 8. For 1 lot, the new cost is $375. For 2 lots, the cost is $425. And for 3+ lots, the cost is $450. That completes the changes to the ordinance, Tracy.
Thank you. So that's the first reading of our ordinance, and I did speak with our attorney today. We will be able to notice the hearing at our next meeting, even though it's only 2 weeks away. I wanted to make sure we didn't actually have to have 30 days, but no, it's just the next meeting. As long as we give 10 days notice of the public hearing. So if we manage to do that, then we'll be able to have it on our agenda for our April meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So we don't have to do any sort of motion or anything, right, Rosemary?
No, we just because it's just the initial reading, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
We would just take comments if the board had any new comments or anything different from prior discussions.
Anybody have anything?
Good.
Okay, next item on the agenda is items of discussion, education and health issues. We've certainly had a lot of that outside of the Board of Health, but on our township website, and of course, you know, we're all in the midst of it. So I don't know if there's anything else that anybody at this point wants to ask about, but go ahead if you do. Okay, next item is board secretary's report, and I think you have an update on radon, right?
I do. I'm very happy to report that at the end of February, we had a radon test that passed the state requirement in the municipal building. So finally got the mitigation in place, And so, so that's great. And, you know, after this experience now, boy, it's been quite some time, 9 months or so, since we began that testing process. We're going to make sure that we're testing on a regular basis in accordance with the recommendations from the county and the state.
Well, Rosemary, I want to thank you in particular for this because, you know, the Board of Health took initiative to get a free test. And Rosemary thought, well, let's get one for the township building while we're getting these free tests from Jenny. So we got the tests and ran them. And because of Rosemary's initiative, we found out that the township building was not in compliance, particularly in the basement. And that, you know, action needed to be taken because we did have a mitigation system in place that obviously was not working properly. So it took a long time, and working with, you know, our consultant on this, and Jason Silverhorn, I think, also worked on it with him.
Yeah, Jason's really did the heavy lifting on this. You know, the board had made the suggestion, someone on the board had made the suggestion to monitor it. So all I did was like follow up with Jason. He did the heavy lifting, I have to say.
Yeah, I want to thank Larry because Larry brought this up. Larry has looked at this over the years, though. You know, he's our sort of tech expert on these things.
We had an odor problem about 20 years ago that worked on. It turned out to be the old septic system. So,
Right. So it's sort of a detective thing to figure out how to fix this. But with perseverance, you did it. And thank you very much, Rosemary.
I'm very, very happy to take this off the agenda.
Okay, so we have the next item, correspondence. There was an animal bite report. Anybody have any other comments on any correspondence? Things that we've been getting about COVID-19 have been going directly up on the township website on the main page, so people wouldn't have to click through to the Board of Health. And a lot of it is going directly to Krista and Rosemary. And so they're keeping it very much up to date.
Yeah,
right,
and actually, yeah, and Rick Wolf has been participating in a forum with mayors and officials from other townships and places in the area to make sure that they are, you know, communicating what's being done in the various townships and communities and municipalities, and try to have some coordination of effort and make sure that there's a common understanding. So there's been a lot of work happening, you know, at the township committee level and especially with the mayor.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're skipping over 8, which will be next meeting, and then bills of the evening. Any
Yes.
questions on bills?
Well, so just a note before that, Tracy, and that's that actually all of the bills on this report are informational only this month. And the reason is because the first 2 bills for Walt Wolf were actually quite some time ago. And so we did not want to continue to withhold funds from Walt. We wanted to get these invoices in front of the Township Committee during their meeting last week. So Tracy and I conferred, and we actually sent through approval on these bills, which are consistent with our contract with Walt Wolf. So they are indeed actually informational this month, even though it's normally something that the board would approve, and any additional bills will of course be on future agenda.
Okay, do we have a motion on the bills that are on the agenda?
I'll move the approval of the bills.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. At this time, we can open to the public again. Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're open to the public. I don't think there's any public attending, right, Rosemary?
Correct, no public attending.
I'll
A
move,
motion.
we close to the public.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. So we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Thank you all very much. I think this went pretty well, considering